anytime we're having trouble understanding, whether or not you end up agreeing. You could still listen and spend time outside of your own self and still disagree. But I think at any time, if you're willing and trying to be empathetic, your best bet is to listen, hands down.
Hey everybody, Mike here with my very, very, very special guest, Bonnie Lewis. Bonnie, hello.
Hello.
Welcome back to the show. How are you?
I'm good. It's so good to be back.
Bonnie, for those of you who are new to the podcast, Bonnie is a dear friend of mine who I initially met. And I always tell this story because it's just so awesome. And in fact, I had a guy from Rock Harbor, Bonnie, who was offended. He came up to me after our first podcast together. He was like, "Oh, I thought I had a good one," and I was like, "No."
I'm sorry I said that. But
I worked at a church called Rock Harbor back in the day, and I was a teaching pastor, and we were trying to raise up other teachers. So we did this teaching class and opened it up for people in the community to send in their own teaching tapes and get critiqued and whatever, and literally. The best, and I'm sorry I tell this story every time, Bonnie, but by far the best one was from a 19-year-old young lady named Bonnie Lewis. And she's been a research assistant for me. I've been a research assistant for her, and it has been absolutely glorious. So Bonnie, you now live in Texas, where you've been for a couple years now? 3?
Yeah, almost two. Almost
two.
Yeah.
And I guess the big news, Bonnie, is that you decided that Eugene Peterson can't have all the fun in writing translations of the Bible, or N.T. Wright, he can't have all the fun. So we're translating the Bible. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. About a month ago, it's been in process for over a year, but a month ago I let the world know and put it on Kickstarter. So it's actually a translation. It's up on Kickstarter right now.
Okay, so and it's called what?
Called Tim Shell.
Spell it.
Timshel.
Oh, it's that. Okay, Tim Shell.
Yeah.
And what's that mean in Hebrew?
Okay, so it means thou mayest, or like loosely translated, we have a choice.
Oh.
And yeah, it's in Genesis 22, it's in Genesis. The first passage we translated was Genesis 22, but it's this idea of conscience, and when God is using it to talk to Cain after he kills Abel, and saying, basically, when you're confronted with a situation or with something, you have a choice of how you will react. And so I named it that for a few reasons. One being, we went through, and you and I have talked about this in the grief and loss podcast we did together. Yep. But we went through like a really rough season where I had delivered our second son as a stillborn. Yeah. And at the time, I was really convinced that was happened because of something that I did wrong. Oh. So it was a punishment from God. Yeah. And I was really confronted with, I think, two options there for me, at least, which was either throw this all out and say, like, he isn't who I thought he was, and he's not loving, and he's not kind, and he's not good, or I have a choice. And I could try to dig in and just see what I find and see what happens. And so we did that. And that was actually the beginning of what we would like to call like our deconstruction to reconstruction phase. And we really came out new people. Our picture of God is bigger. Our view of Jesus is bigger and deeper and more full. And so that's kind of where I got it. But on a personal note, when we cremated our son, we spread his ashes up at Red Rocks Amphitheater in Colorado. And there's like this hiking place, and then there's this mountain that comes down. And so when we walked down the mountain, we actually listened to the song by Mumford and Sons called Tim Shell. And it was really moving and good. And it's kind of about the same thing, but about how we can be with each other in these seasons where we're trying to figure things out. So there was a academic reason and a personal reason I named it that.
Yeah, no kidding. And what, sweet Bonnie, what was it that decided, okay, you needed to write a translation of the Bible? I love it.
So I had been kind of on.
First of all, Bonnie, I'm sorry. You're a woman. You're not even allowed to teach it, let alone translate it. I don't know if you know that.
I know. That's why it's just really
clearly a problem.
And you know what, actually that has been said to me in this past month. So, but
geez.
Yeah, I was on kind of what you might, like what I describe as the preaching circuit. Do you know what I mean? Like people were hiring me to preach and teach, and that's great. And I love doing that. And I still do that. But something about it that's interesting that I would hear time and time again is, I mean, obviously for better, I mean, like all intents and purposes, everything I know about preaching, you taught me. So if I am preaching, I'm doing it as you modeled and as you taught me, which was, you know, like you dive into these 4 different lenses, you look at it through the historical context. What does the language say? And when you preach, you tell those things to make this a fuller story. Well, so I would preach and people would always say, I had never heard that. Where can you tell me where you found that? And I'd be like, absolutely. And send them references. And then I would follow up and I'd be like, did you read that? And they would be like, yeah, I didn't know. Or like, it was so
Totally.
dry. And I was like, yeah, that's fair. I understand that you're not going to read that. But the problem is the other thing I was hearing all the time was, I don't know how to pick up my Bible. It's very confusing.
Absolutely.
I don't know how to pick it up and read it and know it.
Right.
I feel like I'm lost. I don't have the time or necessarily the drive to pick it, to, you know, do all this research. So I heard that on one end. And then being in the kind of space I'm in with people that are deconstructing the same thing, saying, like, I don't know what I believe, but I know that I still love Jesus, but I need to understand these Bible stories in a new way because I have spiritual trauma from like certain ones, or like I know someone that said the Genesis 22 story of Abraham sacrificing his son, she used it as like, this is when her child was born, she left the faith. And she's like, now that I have a kid, I can't believe in a God that would ever ask anybody to sacrifice their son. And so I just realized like, okay, there are so many things, but this was the big kicker for me, is that what we don't need, I don't think, is another person to follow. So I don't need someone saying, this is what Bonnie thinks about the text. You don't need that. Like if anybody's searching for Jesus, they're not going to find him necessarily just reading another book by another author. What we need is an encounter with Jesus. And so that was important. That was really important to me. And so I just said, you know what, like, let's do this. Let's take 20 of the main stories, 10 from the old, 10 from the new, that we've all either heard or at least heard about. And let's bring in the context to it, the cultural context, the language, and let's include it into the writing to match the genre of the passage, so that anybody, no matter where you're at, if you've never heard the story, you've heard it a million times, can pick it up and get a conversation out of it, like with the Lord and with your friends, and wrestle with it and look it up, and, you know, really make us these people that are willing to dive deep into scripture when we might feel that that's too hard of a task, when it's just our NIV that we've always read or whatever.
Right. So when you use the word translation, right, that's a deliberate word.
Yeah.
And there's a spectrum, as we know, of translating, where there's very literal, wooden, like word for word, this word maps onto this word. There's thought for thought. This thought maps into this thought. There's a paraphrase, like the Living Bible, or some would say the Message is that too. Where do you see Tim Shaw falling on that spectrum?
Yeah, so I would say it's definitely on like the fringy end, like past the Message. But what's interesting about it is, because I can't do anything normal, there is some that it is word for word.
Right.
So if you're to read the passage, anytime God spoke, I left that word for word. That was important to me, to be like, no, this is word for word. And then there's some of it that is thought for thought, and some of it that is paraphrased. And the reason why I did that is it was important to me, like, for example, a thought for thought translation, your goal is readability, to use the language of the day, which God does all the time, right? Like in scripture, he does it. In all the different books, he takes a literary genre that like was normally used in the ancient Near East, and then uses it to bring about his own story. So even in the story we translated, like Abraham and Isaac. So here you have Abraham, who child sacrifice was like a part of his religion. And so he uses that to show Abraham who he is and who he is not. And so the point in terms of Tim Shell is we do that is we say like, okay, so some of this is word for word, but some of it is thought for thought, but the main spiritual accuracy, the main spiritual point is kept intact. And that's our main point with it. Versus like, we're not too worried about sentence structure or too worried about word for word, but going the spiritual truth about who God is kept intact in each of the passages.
So I imagine I would
because
imagine,
you know Christians.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's, yeah. So, and I can predict the responses, but
right.
What have been some of the positive responses, and what have been some of the negative responses? Because there's this like, well, it's the Bible. I mean, you can't translate the Bible. It's just you.
Totally.
You can't just translate the thing.
Yep.
And you're doing probably a lot of interpreting, as it's, and then there were these big committees of, white men mostly who decided what we saw. So, I mean, so I'm not for or against it. I don't understand it, and I would never undertake such a project, but I imagine it stirred up some things.
Yeah. Yeah. The going into it was kind of tough because it was like, I felt really called to do it. And it was one of those things that I don't say that lightly. I don't say like, I felt called to make brownies. Like that's not in my vocabulary normally. And it was kind of one of those things that I kind of dragged my feet on because exactly what you said, like, is this okay? Is this fine? Like, am I even allowed? Is this
Totally.
allowed to do this?
Totally.
But doing the research on it is I kind of finally came to a point and had people that trusted advisors say like, yes, you're allowed to do this. And, and here's why. And so I'm going to start with the bad. The bad is exactly what you think. We have a few people who have said, why isn't a commentary? Why? And again, I would say what's different about a commentary would be like, if I was a subject matter expert and I'm saying like, historically, this is what happened, that would be one thing. That would be a commentary. When I do my research, and for example, when we translated this passage, is I am leaning on the shoulders of all the experts. So like I probably read upwards of 100 books just for this one passage on the historical context, and did my own exegesis and then word languages and commentaries and weighed it all and said like, okay, who are we talking about? What was the time? What are the words here? And then said like general consensus. What is that? Do you know what I mean? Like there's no way, obviously it's perfect, because I think that we can all agree anything we ever do is not going to be. But in saying general consensus of these thought leaders and of faith and theology throughout history and of the whole narrative of the Bible, this is what we know to be true. And this is the spiritual truth about God that comes out of it. And so there's a lot of faith involved in that, obviously, right? Like, cause I'm going like, I think, but what's great is that I have a team of people that help me and that fact check and that say, you can't do that, or no, that sounds like you and doesn't sound like him, or, whatever it is. And that's like super humbling, but cause like, so for example, like I think in the translation, like, I had just said, what was I just going to say? Oh, the child sacrifice was part of like Abraham's religion before he became a monotheist. And so I wanted to say that, Abraham thought it was barbaric and that, blah, blah, blah. And one of the people on my team was like, you can't really say that. Like he might've not liked it, but it was like, you need to read up more on what the religion was and what they thought of it and what its purposes was. And so like, that still makes me uncomfortable about the passage, like this hero of our faith, like, oh wait, he came from where and they did what, and so it's kind of like this balance. And so people want to know why it's not a commentary, but again, it was important to me. Like, I don't need to be known for anything. So I didn't need someone saying, this is what Bonnie thinks about this passage. Like I could do that again and it would be vastly different than this translation, because what I think about it is different than I think what it says. So that's that. So people are a little bit uncomfortable with that, and that's fine. I understand why they would be. And then I've had a few people say you're a woman, so you can't do that. And what's interesting about that is that's been mostly men. A few women have also said it.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. And I think sometimes regardless of theology, I think sometimes when you are, and I'm speaking this from a woman, before I was doing something that I was cared about or passionate about, when I saw another woman doing something they cared about or passionate about that seemed to break a rule, it held up a mirror to my own life and going like, why is she allowed to do that and not me? Because we really have been a part of a culture for a long time that has told us there are a set of rules of things you can and cannot do. So when you see somebody stepping out, it kind of reminds you like, could I do something that I want to do that seems risky or that seems to go against things? So there's been that. And then that's been the consensus. A few smaller voices saying, you know, you're a heretic and I'm praying for your lost soul and things like that. And that has happened to me for like 10 years. So it's not
None of these are new.
No. And that's the thing is like, none of these are new. And the best thing I can say to someone too, is I'm like, do you have a life application Bible? And they're like, yeah.
Do you have study notes?
Yeah. And then it's all these study notes at the bottom. I was like, the thing is I might preach and speak, but first and foremost, I'm a writer. And so I literally just took the study notes and put them into the text to challenge myself as a writer. So I'm like, if you are comfortable with going to a church and hearing a sermon, it's the exact same thing of somebody explaining to you all this background and things about it. So there's been that. What has come that's been really beautiful, the good feedback that I didn't know, because you kind of put something out there. I mean, you know this, and you like really don't know who's going to cling to it.
Right.
And so you're like, well, we'll like, here's to hoping. So a few people who are just like ordinary people that are just trying to love Jesus and read the Bible have been like, this is huge for me because I feel like I can understand it, but not in a way that dumbs it down, in a way that makes it more full. And so that's been great because it feels like this is the Bible for everybody.
That's
like
the goal,
anybody can read it. Yeah, exactly. And then the other thing that's been beautiful is so many people in this that have either been burned by the church, have spiritual trauma. I get messages every day and they're saying, I haven't read the Bible in 10 years. Honestly, I read your passage to mock it. And I found myself on my knees just in tears. And I think that God actually does love me and I will read this. And so things like that of saying like, this made me remember that God is there and he cares and he loves. And so that has been so beautiful. That's been like just amazing about it.
We could go on about this.
Yeah.
I mean, hi, I'm Bonnie. What do you do, Bonnie? Oh, I'm translating the Bible.
You know what is so funny? I went to this function and I was like just being me and like just telling stories and jokes. And so this lady said, well, you have to tell me what you do for a living. And I said, oh, well, I'm a pastor and I'm translating a Bible. She got like so stone cold face. And she goes, I'm sorry, I'm so taken aback. I thought it would be something more fun.
Well, yeah.
And I was like,
We're
I guess
working on those stereotypes.
Okay?
Yeah, seriously.
So good.
Okay, so Tim Shell, Kickstarter, we got a week left.
Yeah, so we're like 40% funded.
Okay.
And they say you make your last in the last week. So and the thing is it's like the goal is 31,000. So we're about 40% funded. We have 6 days left. I don't make a penny off of it. So it pays for the printing of the book, which was big for me. It's a hand woven, like really nice. I wanted it to mirror just how beautiful the gospel is. But also I didn't feel comfortable sending it off to like some unethical printing situation. And so it's done here in America. And so that's really important to me in terms of just like an ethical standard there. So you can get a hardcover, softcover, but digital things, there's lots of things. And so it's on Kickstarter. You can go to bit.ly/Tim Shell Project. And it's on there. We have about a week left, but it's been really exciting. And like I was saying, so it goes through the printing of the book, the making of the movie. My friend who's a filmmaker made it, but I'd like to be able to pay him for his craft. I have an editor on the team. I have a psychologist on the team. I have a graphic designer and then an artist. So all of them, if it's fully funded, will get paid and you'll get a book in your hands. And that's it. So I just want to make it so I can pay people
for these 22 stories. These 22 stories.
20. 20 stories. Genesis 22 is the first one that we translated. So
Oh,
it's on the
20
Kickstarter
stories. That's
page.
right, 10 and 10.
Yeah.
Okay, you're right.
Yes.
I got
Yeah.
Genesis 22. All right, well, I'm interested in what our audience will think of this. I think that
It's probably a mixed bag.
Well, what's fascinating is this project is going to raise unstated assumptions and views about the Bible, what the Bible is, what it's not, who can touch it. I mean, it's so that's interesting to me. But so thank you, Bonnie.
Yeah.
I wanted to also talk a little bit about this idea of toxic masculinity that's all over. You've experienced a little bit of that, obviously, in this project. But there was a Gillette ad, of course, that and I talked. Sky Jithani. He's a podcaster too. I was on his podcast, and we kind of had this Patreon only conversation about it. But I was like, I want to do some more work on that, because it's a super interesting conversation to me. So, first of all, did you see the Gillette ad?
Yes.
Have you seen it? Okay, and for those of you who have not seen it, you can Google it right now. It's essentially a series of vignettes where boys and men are behaving badly. So there's one where a corporate CEO was mansplaining over a point an executive woman had made. There are some boys chasing another little boy to bully him. There's some stuff, texted and written online about another young boy. There's some, leering and sort of suggestiveness. Yeah. So I mean, it covers kind of the gamut of what's, commonly associated with bad. And in the background are these Me Too sort of moments playing on, different TV stations and all those sorts of things. And then there's this line of men who are barbecuing in the backyard.
Yes, that is.
This was random. Weird. and they're watching two little boys fight. And all of them are saying in unison, "Boys will be boys. Boys will be boys."
It's so creepy. Yeah.
So creepy. And so the commercial ends, of course, with one of the adults coming over and breaking up the fight. One of the adults, rescuing the boy that was going to be bullied. So it's an interesting. And Sky's take on it was super interesting, because he's like, I want to talk about what sort of virtue signaling corporations are doing now, with what Nike did with Colin Kaepernick, and obviously this one is pretty significant. But I just wanted to talk a bit about the conversation about toxic masculinity, because the reactions to this, not surprisingly, were very polarized. And I just thought, okay, well, this is interesting. So, I mean, when you saw it, what was your first thought? As the mother of sons and a wife of a husband, and
right, yeah. So
you've got your feminine qualifications all lined up.
I sure do. It's not. I wouldn't consider, like my husband especially, but either my son did fit in any of those stereotypes that are in the video. At the same time, I think that probably just comes with hard work and intentionality. So when I saw it, I cried, but I do want to say I cry at most commercials. So I don't know if that's, like. So
here's a Ford F-150.
And I'm like, did you
we're crying, rescuing this deer. Yes. And then.
Like, I'm always like, look at them. But anyways, so
awesome.
It was, yeah, it would. It struck me as that good for them. That's awesome. And so then I was actually very surprised when I saw all the backlash, which I don't know why. I shouldn't be surprised about that stuff anymore, but it actually shocked me, and I had to go rewatch it to be like, what is it? And put myself, because it's easy for me as a woman to go, yeah, good on you. But then to go, okay, if that was about me and there were stereotypes about women, how would I feel about that? So I really had to go back and kind of look. But I don't know, what about you? Because I wouldn't consider you any of those stereotypes. So like when you saw it, can you align with being like, oh, I could see why someone might find offense, or you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Bonnie. First of all, anything that promotes alternative visions of masculinity, And that outside of the sexist, misogynistic, dominant sort of, I was watching, and this will come back. I was watching a movie called The Expendables. All right. So This is the dumbest. Oh, but it's so glorious because like when I grew up in the 80s, the masculine imagery consisted around Bruce Willis in Die Hard and Arnold Schwarzenegger in The Terminator and all these Terminator movies and Rocky Balboa slugging it out, right? So there was this very narrowly defined masculine road. So Stallone comes out, and I don't know when these movies were made, but it's like this ragtag of old guys, this group of old guys who's hired to do all this stuff. But what's fascinating is the portrait of masculinity that I see now, and I go, oh my goodness, I would never have noticed what I'm noticing now. Like the women are there purely as accessories. The ideal of the single, lonely male who sacrificed relationship for the sake of, this awesomeness. The women are there only to be rescued. They're only there as accessories. They're seen as problematic. They're seen as hindrances and burdens. It's so textbook. So. Mike today is so glad for any positive reinforcement to the idea that, peacemaking, mercy, standing up to the crowd when the crowd is bullying. All of those ideals, man. And that, I think any follower of Jesus ought to go, yeah. That's,
of course. Yeah.
That's kind of the dude that we're following after. He did a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
So, but on the other hand, I do think, and this was what was so interesting is I read the negative comments, and obviously a lot of the negative comments just validated their point.
Yeah, I know.
Which was like, well, okay, you just made the point better than
your masculine, your madness is showing here.
Right.
Exactly.
But hold on, just think about what you said. Your madness is showing, and that is where I think people began to get upset, because it's a fine line between where my masculinity ends and where toxic masculinity begins, right?
Yeah.
Because in a lot of situations, aggression is good. Competition is good. The desire to protect. In some situations, I like even thinking about my son, I would want him to be adventurous and risk-taking and things that would be classically masculine. But they become toxic when sin drives them, when the flesh drives them, when, whatever. So so on the one hand, I was like, okay, yes, I applaud this completely. On the other hand, I was like, okay, how fine is that line between masculine and toxically? So when you said your manhood is showing, okay, now that's fascinating because someone would hear that and say, the problem isn't manhood. The problem isn't masculinity, right?
Yeah, I would say,
right?
Yeah. I agree with you. I do want to say, though, that here's the problem is that.
All right, good.
I've always said this to be true.
Say it, Bonnie. You're translating the Bible. There's nothing more controversial than you can say.
I don't know.
Than now.
I've always said this to be true, but for people that are on top,
yes,
equality can feel like oppression. And so here's the problem is don't always think that as a man, and this is from talking to other men, but you can feel free to say that's not true. You're a woman. Is that I don't always think that you are aware of your positioning, not you personally,
but
absolutely. Men. And so
undeniably true.
So I say that like a little bit tongue in cheek, and I'm sarcastic, and I can sometimes have a mouth on me, and I know that. So a better way than saying your manhood is showing, what I'm saying there is like, hey, your privilege is becoming apparent. Do you know what I mean? Like the second somebody says to you, hey, watch out for this in yourself, and our response is immediately to defend and protest and whatever. Right. I think that that's a sign of, hey, wait a second. Like no one is saying you're all like this. And that's a spectrum of, like you're saying, of toxic masculinity, because the line is so fine. And you can beat someone up and it's toxic. You can also catcall a woman and it's still toxic. Poison is poison no matter how much you drink of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's tough because if someone is calling out masculinity, toxic masculinity, and saying, hey, this is a problem.
Right.
And people are freaking out about it. I think that we should call that into question and go, okay, but why? Like, why is this?
Yeah,
why are you defensive about this?
And that's what I'm trying to explain. I think people saw the ad and said they're not just going after toxic masculinity. They're going after masculinity too. So I think that was one reaction. I also think that there is a significant number of men, and I wouldn't say they're all white, who think there is an assault on masculinity. And the only way to elevate women, and again, these aren't my words, these are their words, but the only way to elevate women is to degrade men. And so here's just another example of we're all lumped together. We're all, so because I had the same thing. I'm like, well, okay, good on you guys. I question your motives in releasing this ad. I mean, obviously worked because here we are talking about it. So I'm like, and a shaving ad, and you go back and look at some of their ads.
I'm sorry, it's like so the other way.
Right. I'm like, oh, okay.
Like
so now, so shut up. I mean, whatever. But I do think, okay, so that was my attempt to kind of understand why there was a lot of pushback.
Right.
Okay. Well, because people think, well, it's talking about masculinity, and I think people think that it's part of a much greater attack or agenda or whatever word you're going to use on what it is to be masculine. Because one of the things I've been doing lately that's super interesting to me is I've been studying Jordan Peterson a lot. And because there's so much about him. Have you ever heard him talk, or did you read his book or anything?
No, I've just heard of him.
Yes. And like Joe Rogan and Jocko, I don't know Jocko's last name, but Tim Ferriss, there's this whole industry of like helping men learn to be men.
Yeah.
And Jordan, is kind of the intellectual, and people have all sorts of reactions to him. And I'm not reacting at all to his content. I want to find out why he's speaking so powerfully to young men. Because it is crazy. So on the one hand, you've got this ad. On the other hand, you've got this huge, and I don't know how huge, but huge seemingly press towards, in the Christian circles, it's John Eldridge, or it used to be Mark Driscoll, or so you've got, there seems to be some problem either way you slice it, right? There's obviously this thing called toxic masculinity. The Christian word for that is just sin. Right. I mean, it's and we're all infected. So I'm toxic. So when you asked me, hey, do you display some of these stereotypes? No, but I'm toxic in my own ways.
Right.
What about passive masculinity? Right. That can be toxic too.
Yeah.
Where, you just don't invest your heart in anything, and your wife can do whatever your wife can do. You're not engaging with her. Right. You've withdrawn completely. So to me, it was such a good, interesting starting point. Now, back to the idea of privilege. That has some legs. Because I don't remember if it was from you or I heard it somewhere else. If it was
a really good thought, it was probably me.
It was probably in the Bible that you've written. It was something like the loss or equality to the privileged. Equality feels like
oppression. Yeah, I preached that at Vox. Yeah. Back when you were there. Yes.
So I did steal that from you. Talk about that.
But to be fair, I think I stole it from a magazine article. But it was
perfect.
It's all going around. But in terms of, you have structural privileges, whether it be in society, in a household, whatever it is. And sometimes like we're in these roles that we're just literally just born into, and we don't even realize it. Like as a white woman, I have that over maybe a woman of color, right? So they're in society, there's all different layers and levels and whatever. But sometimes what can happen is that when somebody who is on top or towards the top is somebody from down below in this ladder of privilege or the structure is brought up to equality, the people that were on top there that are now equal with the people on the bottom, that equality doesn't feel like equality. It feels like oppression. It feels like
loss of rights.
Their rights are being called into question.
Yeah.
They can't. And so people have, think I spoke about it first when like the Black Lives Matter came out, same type of thing. And so I think sometimes what happens is, like in this example, is sometimes men are saying, hey, wait, like that's not all of us, which is fair because it's not. And like you're saying, like, no, that's toxic. That's not just masculinity. But sometimes when somebody who's on top, if women are being, or whoever else is being called up to be equal, the person on top, that's going to feel oppressive. It doesn't feel like equality as it does for the people that were on the bottom, you know? Yeah.
And not only that, but you then see, I mean, if we're going to talk a little theology, you see this as one of the consequences of the sin of our first parents, right? I mean, God, however you understand the story, God simply says, your desire will be for your husband, he will rule over you. And that's not normalizing, that's not prescribing, that's describing now that what was intended to be co-equal intimacy and purpose in mission is now a power struggle. And so you do see men trying to rule, and it comes in all sorts of crazy different ways. So part of the problem I have with the phrase toxic masculinity is, well, on the one hand, yes, it's not everybody, but on the other hand, it kind of is, if you buy the whole premise that, yeah, we're all fallen and in ways fall short and have to learn how to rightly relate to not only other men, but to women as not only friends and coworkers and acquaintances, but then as, you know, significant others and spouses. That's a tough deal. Yeah. What do you see? So if a guy's out there listening to this and going, okay, well, I do feel like we're being all lumped together, and I feel like I don't have privilege. I've got this opioid. There, like Ohio is weird. It's got this huge heroin problem and this massive opioid problem. Yeah, and it's among white, poor men primarily. And I think one of the reasons why Trump was popular is that he was, you know, appealing to their sense of disenfranchisement from the liberal media or whatever it is. But how do you go about showing? I don't know how to best ask this in the most correct way. So how do you go about showing somebody who doesn't buy any of what we're saying that what we're saying is true? Yeah, I think you can send stats, you can send, you know, whatever you want, news articles. It's not going to happen unless they spend time outside of themselves. I did this thing on like my Instagram story. You know how you can do, well, now you're like so fancy, you do Instagram stories. I got no idea. I got a guy. I got a guy that helps. And I don't know if you've noticed, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but sweet Nate Erie trolls me every time. I never thought. I'm like, Rob Bell and Erwin McManus, they don't get trolled by their children on Instagram. And yet, here's Big Nate. Anyway, I freaking love Nate. Oh my goodness. So good. So you can do stories where you like ask a question and then people can write in their answers. And so the question I asked, because I had seen it, like someone had done an experiment. So I'm like, I'll just do an experiment with the people I know. And so the question I asked on there was, what do you do? Either like what precautions do you take to stay safe at night or during the day? For women? And, no, just or to anybody. Anybody. And I see what you're doing. I see what you're doing. So what was so interesting is that, and then I reposted their answers. And so when I reposted it, I put it in 2 lines, like men said this and women said this. And the women's side is like everything. It's like, I don't park in parking garage. I don't wear my hair down. I don't go out past 6. I never drink at night. I never take a taxi cab. I mean, it's like line, like literally just hundreds. And then there was one male that said nothing. I don't think about it. Right. And somebody wrote me and was like, holy crap. I had no idea. Like, I just didn't even know that was something that crossed your mind. And so I think anytime we're having trouble understanding whether or not you end up agreeing, you could still listen and spend time outside of your own self and still disagree. But I think at any time, if you're willing and trying to be empathetic, your best bet is to listen. Hands down. Come on. Listening is that's not masculine.
Oh my gosh.
Well,
that was toxic, what you
and
just
I'm
said.
quoting totally. And I'm so Bonnie sent me an article right before we went on the air that I have not had time to digest and vomit out. But it's from some non-surprising folks who've been mentioned before in our podcast.
Add it again.
No, but it's just
it's just so consistent.
Well, and of course there's some things that are said here that are absolutely right. You know, one of the things that it's the article says is, hey, we obviously join with God in confronting any violence,
right.
any abuse, you know, blah 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 blah. But there's this fascinating, they and this is just so weird. So they go into the word effeminate, right, in 1 Corinthians
6:9 for anyone who wants to follow.
And so here's what the writer writes. Instead, our society celebrates what Paul calls literally soft men, a group that will not enter the kingdom of God, 1 Corinthians 6:9.
I can't.
And discomfort at this will not inherit the kingdom version of manliness is exactly a symptom of what the American Psychological Association finds malignant about traditional manhood. Now, that's another thing we haven't talked about is the APA adjusted some of they've called into question some of what has traditionally been associated with masculinity. So right. Again, it's people see this through this part and parcel of a bigger agenda. But as much as APA and LGBTQ people protest this as hate speech, the effeminate shall not enter the kingdom of God, and it is unloving not to say so. Now, wow. So thank you for being so consistent. I love you, my brothers and sisters.
No, there are no sisters. Okay.
Well, there are women that write for them. Absolutely.
Well,
with the approval of their husbands. Absolutely. Now, I know that's cheap shot. I'm sorry. I got to continue reading this, Bonnie, and please interrupt. I want your reaction to some of this too, because you're writing the Bible.
First of all, can you explain maybe to the listener who won't go and find this or Google it, what they are defining here as soft or effeminate?
Well, I'm going to go right. I'm going to go right now.
Okay, go ahead.
See, Bonnie, we're so on the same wavelength.
We really are.
While men who brutalize and manipulate represent one form of perversion, men who sit passive, complacent, spiritually and emotionally frail represent another. Okay, so toxic. So feminine means passive, complacent, spiritually and emotionally frail. Okay, so just get that, write those down. Spiritually and emotionally frail. What that
emotionally frail.
Right. I don't even know what that means. So also do men who rebel against their sex by acting like women. And too many classrooms that celebrate this perversion act as accomplices to confusing boys and girls of today. Paul commands men, be watchful, stand firm in the faith, act like men, be strong. And he says, listen, David Mathis, so this is someone being quoted in the article, rightly tells us that the strongest men are gentle, but do not hear him saying that godly men are soft, fragile, weak, or effeminate. They do not faint on the day of adversity. They dress for war every day against forces of evil. They are sacrificial imitators, not limp deferrers. Men who charge against the enemy gates, leading from the front and refusing to take cover behind their wives and children. They lead, they protect, they initiate, they love, sacrifice, they work, they worship. They are men. Godly men are neither severe or effeminate. They have a sword, but use it against the dragon, not the princess in the castle. All right, so they're saying, listen, on the one hand, you have this toxic, aggressive, brutal, abusive form of masculinity that is rightly being called out as toxic.
Right.
And on the other hand, but there's another form of toxic masculinity that isn't being called out and in fact promoted in our culture, namely the soft man. And here's a Bible verse. to back it up, the word effeminate. And then we're going to smuggle in the contrast between effeminate and non-effeminate masculinity with a bunch of cultural constructs like swords and
Yes,
you know, I mean,
exactly.
so it's absolutely
It's
fascinating.
loaded. Yeah.
So what do you think about the effeminate part?
Yeah, I think it's to be kind.
Let's go Greek. What do you got on this?
So I'm looking it up and I'm like going, okay, I see. I don't literally translated, obviously, is my jam here, but is it says, you know, soft, definitely, but I'm not picking up soft isn't how we are describe how they are or how our society would necessarily describe soft. What I have here is it's like a self polluter. So somebody's that is like submit to unnatural lust. It's somebody that is destroying themselves in terms of.
I thought it was used in the context of sexuality.
Yeah, it is. So it's like in 6:9, it's like, do not be sexually immoral, idolaters, adulterers, men who practice homosexuality, thieves, greedy, drunkards, swindlers. So it's like but it's in the context of somebody who's polluting their own life. Right. So I don't think it's fair to say at all. It's totally
emotionally
out of context.
Frail.
To be like,
how the hell do you get emotionally frail out of that?
You don't. It's terrible exegesis. I mean, terrible. And it's what the problem there is that then I think it just drives the wedge deeper. Like these statements are made, and then you wonder, well, why aren't they coming to church? And why aren't they following the gospel? You know what I mean? And it's just like, it's awful because it's terrible exegesis. It's awful.
So amen. Absolutely. And that's the thing, to pack this. And then he goes on. He says, I just returned from a visit to the greatest place on earth. My wife and I were shocked at how many men
gosh. Did you read that part?
Acted like women. Lispy sentences, light gestures, soft mannerisms, and flamboyant jokes were everywhere to be seen. On display for a park flooded with children. No hiding it, no shame, no apologizing. This perversion of masculinity warranted no commercials. So, and again, I always want to respect and say, yes, there's a point there. And I was making it earlier that passivity can be just, if not more damaging than aggression. No question.
Right.
And our culture is rewarding or at least permitting men to not have responsibility in their sexual activities, in the ability to live at home until they're however old, right? I mean, Certainly, men are not forced to mature. They were in the same ways they were in previous generations, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I would agree. I would say that's true. And there is, of course, a great deal of gender confusion. No question. I mean, we can get at it. That's a whole topic we're going to avoid like the plague right now. So yes, I mean, for conservative Christian organization to say, listen, let boys be boys, let girls be girls. Come on. Kate Hudson came out and she said she's raising her child to be gender neutral.
I know, but then she had like a pink swaddle and a pink bow.
Right.
So I was like, not really.
Well, and we would say from the Christian story, that's impossible.
Right.
Right. I mean, your genderedness is part of the image of God. I mean, now, again, what is to be trans? Okay, I got all of those questions. But my point back to this article is what we've done is we've taken one Greek word, mm-hmm. and it seems we've pulled it way out of context, and now mm-hmm. we're defining it using stereotypes that are very much directed at the LGBTQ community.
Yeah.
But not only that, we've packed the word soft with anybody who is spiritually and emotionally frail, which is incredible because the Bible seems filled with men who are spiritually and emotionally frail, mm-hmm. and yet we're used by God greatly, right? I mean, I am astounded. Mm-hmm. I'm astounded at some of this because, and I think, well, anyway, keep going.
No, I mean, I will. And I mean, I agree with you. And it's tough because you look at, and you would say like, okay, well, what is it that we're defining as spiritually and emotionally frail? Like
Of
who's
course.
deciding that? And
Exactly.
what's like, why do you get to say
I take
this is what that
antidepressants.
means?
I take antidepressants. I've gone through 2 bouts of anxiety where I made some really bad decisions. So I'm frail, right?
Right.
I'm not going to inherit the kingdom of God.
You're dead now
are you
to
serious?
that. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Just like,
it's idiotic. It's so oversimplified. It's
yeah.
unsympathetic. It is not pastoral. I mean, oh my goodness.
But yeah, exactly. I mean, there's no bedside manner here at all. But it really does beg the question, if we're coming full circle here with like somebody like me, right, that is translating the Bible and using all these commentaries and do all this stuff, and people are upset about it. Yet maybe those same people will read something like this and never check it and just go, oh yeah, that's fine. And so what bugs
Sure.
me is some of the toxic culture, if we're going to talk about toxicity, some of the toxic culture about any of these topics is because bloggers, people, whatever, have a tendency to take something out of context and then write a bunch of stuff around it. And we don't have a literate church to go, wait, no, that's not right. Like, I might still agree with your point here, but you aren't allowed to use God's word in that way. Do you know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah, if you just want to make the general point, okay.
Fine, go for it. But use it and then to kind of pack it in this language is not fair, and it's disappointing.
And it's harmful, and it's toxic, and it furthers toxicity, which is a great System of a Down song. It furthers toxicity in its own way, because now we're confronted with the Christian community.
Yes.
Right? And the Christian community has an incredible opportunity, right? So we clearly have been purveyors of toxic masculinity. Mm-hmm. Right? So we've either taught men that they have to be hyper aggressive, love MMA, if you don't drink beer, you're a pansy. And all of that, is said either playfully or seriously, but this fits into that sort of, this article fits into that sort of mode. Or we've told guys, listen, Mr. Rogers is the guy that you need to be, and just be nice and polite, and never, and be nice and meek and passive. And Jesus turns out to be this, this very kind individual who never got angry or whatever. And you're like, well, neither of those are right. So all of that's true. It seems like the Christian community has an incredible opportunity to lead the way on what it is to be masculine.
Well, to develop a new construct for it. And right.
So where would you start with that?
Oh my gosh. Oh.
Yeah. All right, I'll go first.
Okay.
And then you make it better.
Oh, well, we'll see. Go ahead.
Well, no. I mean, so the first place I'm going to start, if I'm coming up with a construct for masculinity, is Jesus of Nazareth.
Yeah.
Right? Because, right or wrong, or however you understand it, he came as a man. Now, God is not gendered. God is both masculine and feminine. All of that is true. Imageries used of God from feminine imagery to masculine imagery. Got it. But Jesus, for those of us who follow him, seemed to embody a masculinity that was fully orbed. In other words, there was anger. There was anger, and how what he did with his anger is amazing in and of itself. There was passion, there was compassion, there was gentleness and firmness, and this whole spectrum.
He cried.
He wept. I mean, and what Jesus did was elevate women in every encounter he had with them. He was not in any way, shape, or form threatened by strong women, spiritual women.
Or passive about anything that was going on to women.
Yes. Oh, yes, exactly right. He inserted himself many times in these situations. No, that's a great point. Absolutely. So I'm going to start building a masculine construct there and say, okay, so how did Jesus treat people? And there's a place for anger. There's a place for aggression. There's a place for the strong, manly, Jesus. But there's also a place for Jesus, the Jesus who weeps over the city, and the Jesus who has compassion and touches somebody, and the Jesus who elevates women. They don't have, it's not an either or. And it's what it is the tension of trying to live in both that affects us and provokes change, right?
Yep.
Would you agree with all of that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think one thing I would ask you if I was like, say I was, if you were, as people do, put out a document about it, is
Oh, yes.
and
Yes.
get all these signatures.
Oh, yes. The
Then
Bonnie
it's
and Mike statement
it's official
on toxic masculinity.
Toxic masculinity is the question would be then. So say that's you're going to have a handful of people that are tracking with you, are like,
Yep.
yes, totally, absolutely, and then they would stop at, well, I'm not sure about. They might even stop. Of course, I'll interject and stand up for women when you do, but they would stop at. I'm not sure about. I'm trying to remember how you worded it, but I'm not sure about, raising women up, for example, or whatever.
Right.
And
right.
And so the question then remains, if we're going to say, here's a good starting point for biblical, masculinity is it all in? Is there room here? Does that make sense? Like,
Absolutely.
If raising women up is part of what it means to be masculine, then
yes.
you're going to have a different definition if someone's like, well, no, I just don't agree that women can teach, speak, whatever.
Correct. So yes, I would give about 1,000 disclaimers.
Yeah.
One of them being that masculinity can look 1,000 ways. Femininity can look 1,000 ways. I don't want to reinforce all the stereotypes whenever we're talking about, gender.
Right.
Second thing is, there is I think gender differences are both culturally conditioned and some are innate.
Yeah.
The issue in our world is that the right sees them as all innate, and the left seems to see them as all culturally conditioned. Now, and I'm oversimplifying. But so I'd want to walk that middle ground initially and say, no, I think there are some innate differences, absolutely. And
right.
I think there are some culturally conditioned differences that we need to work on. And how do we teach sinful men how to channel their masculine souls towards righteousness and not, towards selfishness or power or whatever else? So all of that is absolutely true. When you go to Genesis 1 and 2, of course, I would argue the theological picture is absolute oneness, unity, mutuality, no hint of inferiority or hierarchy at all. Hierarchy is a consequence of the fall. And we see in Paul's instructions, who Paul has been wrongly understood to be a purveyor of patriarchy, Paul's instructions, even in Ephesians, I think are radically egalitarian.
Yeah.
So that, yes, the way men are to treat women isn't as objects to be dominated or consumed, or we have to walk on eggshells now because women have all the power. Rather, they're co-laborers. They're, it's this beautiful, beautiful picture. And that's what the New Testament teaching on gender is pushing us back to.
Agreed.
Right? So I'd start with all of that. Then I'd go to Jesus and I'd say, okay, let's just read a bunch of Jesus stories and note the characteristics of Jesus, because the scripture is very specific in telling us about Jesus's emotional state at several places in his ministry. And if Jesus, not coming as the perfect expression of manhood, but the perfect expression of humanity, can then be translated into classically masculine categories, and we disciple towards that, I think the church has an incredible opportunity to have its Me Too moment result in something that's actually good. I mean, because Nate, yes, I have a 15-year-old boy full of hormones, loves playing sports, and so here he is, right? And who do I point him to? Who do I point him to as the masculine example? Right? The
Jesus.
Masculine examples he follows. Well, yeah. Okay.
That's always the right answer.
But it's like Steph Curry and Ronaldo and Lionel Messi and then he sees politicians. I mean, so there's this missed opportunity in the church to really do some good here about what it looks like to elevate women. For some people, elevating women is simply the first step in acknowledging they're equal. Yeah. Right? That's your first step. Yeah. For others, it's stepping away from power and sharing it. Yeah. Right? So there's this big continuum. I mean, if it's my heroin addicted, Trump loving neighbor down the street, then we're going to have a much different conversation than you and I are going to have.
Right. No, that's fair. And but what's interesting about it is everything you're saying here is a good reminder too, that I think the church can do just as good and develop um, a biblical, like, feminine path. I mean, for like,
Absolutely.
do you know what I mean? Like, for me, for example, like, I often get like, oh, you're a feminist and you think, and it's like, no, I don't think that. I think that I have qualities that are different than men, and that's what makes me me. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's what's different, and that's what's beautiful. But like, for example, think about it, like, one of the things that's hard about this project, for example, and that's been true for almost my whole ministry, is I don't fit necessarily with the women ministry, but I'm also not welcome at the table with the men. And so it's this weird, and so the people that I look to, or that I'm like, who will I point my daughter to, don't necessarily have the same theology. And so what do I do there? Do you know what I mean? And so in both of these, I think there needs to be kind of like a 2.0 of going, okay, like, the pendulum is swinging. Can we stop it in the middle for a bit and try to figure something out? Nope, we can't. Because then we have nothing to, no, everyone's bored.
Well, yeah. And it requires nuance and messy and hard conversations. And I mean, just, I've been so reminded, and this is where, I can't get off the hook of, okay, I can talk about toxic masculinity, but if that conversation doesn't drive me to look at me and how I treat my wife, and do I treat my daughter and son the same way, and how do I treat women that I work with? And I mean, like, I called you Sweet Bonnie earlier, and I was like, I mean that as a playful thing. But do I call, like, Rick Sweet Rick? Do I call Andy? I called him Andy Bear. I don't know if I ever called him Sweet Andy. So on the one hand, this is painful, and in some ways I'm like, come on, do I really have to worry about this stuff? And in other ways, it's such a good thing, because as I'm raising my son, I do want to raise him to be a man. Right. But what's that mean?
Right. To redefine it. I know. But it's like, but at the same time, like, I think we have a choice too. It's painful, but it's also like, I see these moments as the Spirit working and going, oh my gosh, look, we get to step into something he's doing if we choose to do so. Yeah. And that's a beautiful thing. Do you know what I mean? Like, that we don't have to, other religions and thought process and stuff, or detachment, or you just, get your mind right, or whatever it is. It's like, no, we have a living God that is reworking things for renewal, and how beautiful that we get to be a part of the process of it. Yep. And I would agree, like, even my husband, he is very obviously a huge supporter and encourager and aware. And he was like, he said to me at work, he said, my biggest thing at work now is making sure that women on our team are elevated when they, the same as men, and that I step in on others' behalf. And he's like, because until you were open and honest about how it felt to be a woman, I had no idea. Right. And he's like, I didn't even know. I just didn't. And you don't know what you don't know. You know what I mean? But once you do know, especially as a Christian, you have a responsibility to act different and to be different about it.
And, oh, that's so true, Bonnie. And I see that raising my daughter versus raising my son. Yeah. My son and I have all sorts of adventure conversations. My daughter and I have safety conversations.
Totally. Well, and part of that is, it is needed. Do you know?
No question.
Part of it is needed, but at the same time, I would suspect you because I'm a friend of yours, you challenge me to be adventurous and courageous and brave. Yeah. And so that, I know you want that for her. Do you know what I mean? But it's not always, and I'm saying this from experience, it's totally not always the go-to when it's your own kids or your own family. It's like, oh my gosh, and you're kind of freaking out about it. I know, even Scouts too. I mean, she's tiny, but and Chip is 8. But even now, the way that I look at them is totally different. I know. I don't feel like I'm old enough to have an 8-year-old.
No way.
But just because you always think I'm like 18 still.
Listen, when people see you, all right, whatever you do to your skin, whatever skincare you got going is incredible.
Well, it is.
Because how old are you now? How old are you now?
I'm 34.
Yeah, there's just no way. You will,
Well,
in my
that's
heart, you will always be a 25-year-old with the maturity of a 75-year-old.
There you go. Someone was like, "You've lived a lot of life, and it doesn't show here on your face,
Right?
but it shows
Right.
in your heart." I was like,
Well, there
"Thanks."
you go.
But no,
All
but
right,
it
Bonnie.
is different. And I just want to say one more thing. Some of it
Yes.
is cultured, and I think all of this stuff is so messy and nuanced, like you said, and requires digging in and requires thought process. But like, if we are disciples, our whole point is to figure out what Jesus would do in this situation and how we can be more like him. Like, that's the whole point of it. And so even me included, if we sit here and we don't take it to heart, or we don't challenge ourselves and, do something, I think we miss out not only on like creating a path for people that need to meet Jesus and know Jesus, but to be a part of the work that he's doing. That's the kingdom here and now. And I don't want to miss that.
Preach on, preacher. Love it.
Gosh.
All right, Bonnie. Well, to those in the Vox community, my goodness, this week's email should be really, really interesting because, and this has been the greatest thing about doing the podcast, Bonnie, and you know this. I mean, oh my goodness, the questions, the thoughtful critiques, it's always so good. So I always feel like I have permission to throw dumb stuff out. And then have wiser people react to it and tell me how to do it better. In this case, you're lumped in with me because
great.
you said right at the beginning that you're just doing what I would do, and so that is bad for you. But anyway, Bonnie, thank you, bless you,
Thank you.
brothers and sisters. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May God shine his face upon you. May the Lord lift up his countenance to you. And in these days, may he give you peace. Bonnie, thank you. Till next time.
All right. See ya.
See ya.